Welcome to this online course on game theory. Today we are continuing our discussion on repeated games. In the last video, I discussed repeated games where we knew there was a set ending time. When that happens, you actually usually expect the results to be the same as if it was a one-off game. It will just simply repeat. Today we're going into something more interesting and more realistic in indefinitely repeated games, often thought of as infinitely repeated games. When a game is played repeatedly, but there's not a definite end in sight, it's indefinitely repeated. We treat it as if it's infinitely repeated. And a key with this is that payments in the future are discounted. The reason why they're discounted: money or utility is generally worth more now. You could have inflation, people are myopic, but another thing, there's a probability the game could end that's unforeseen, right? I mean, not to be too morbid, but if you are engaged in a daily transaction with an individual and you could try to really get the best out of them. It could succeed once, but then you won't get to do business anymore. Whereas you're doing business every day with that person. This game likely is going to go on for a long time, but there's a probability that somebody gets sick, gets killed, right? I mean, the games end at some point, but we don't know when it ends. It's indefinitely repeated. That will cause the future to be discounted. So the game could end. Money, there could be inflation, so any payments are worth a little bit less. There could be just people are myopic. Now is worth more than the future. Number of reasons, but we discount the future. And it's very key, but discounting the future does allow us to actually also solve the game. So the realism of the world and the way things work is actually helpful in this case for figuring out how to solve when could a repeated game work and yield cooperation. So we talk about discounting. First, we introduce what's called the discount factor. If it is, we'll be using the symbol delta for this, but if the discount factor is 0.98, what that indicates is a payment 1 year from now would be worth, it's only 98% of the value of what it's worth today. So if somebody says, I'll give you $100 a year from now, if your discount factor is 90.98, you are equally happy getting the 100 a year from now versus 98 today. Taking a step back, let's say a discount factor is 0.8. Well, in the right now, period 0, a payment 0.8 to the 0th power, well, payment's worth whatever the full payment is, because to the 0th power, that's right now, the money's not discounted. In the next period, we have to discount the payment to reflect the fact that it's being paid in a future period. So it's discounted, it's only worth 80% of what it would have been worth today. Right? It's a pretty significant discount factor. Well, in the following period, though, it's discounted even more. It's 0.8 squared, or 0.64. And in the period after that, it's discounted by 0.64 times 0.8 again, right? 0.8 cubed. And this keeps going on. Each subsequent period, the money is worth less and less and less. So in terms of discounting the future, if you take any delta, any discount factor, to the power of 0, plus the power of 1, plus the power of 2, plus the power of 3, and so on, as long as that number is between 0 and 1, it converges to 1 divided by 1 minus delta. And that allows us to figure out the present value, the expected value, present value of a stream of future payments. And this will be really powerful for us. The reason we're doing this is we're going to be able to compare a stream of payments that might be smaller from cooperating with a potential one-time much larger payout by cheating on an agreement. This will allow us to determine, is cooperation sustainable? Is the stream of payments, is the net present value or the expected value of this stream of payments, is that higher than the payoff for cheating on the agreement for playing non-cooperatively. And this is fascinating because we're getting to a point where the incentives are lined up for cooperative behavior, which is actually pretty fantastic, right? A lot of the time we assume that people aren't going to be cooperative. They're going to be, everybody will look out for their self-interest. And then that's still the case. But there are a lot of times where people are self-interested and still do cooperate with each other. And we're starting to see from a game theory structure when this makes sense. So as mentioned, general discount factor is denoted by the symbol delta. A greater delta means a smaller discount for the future. So if delta is 1, well, the future is not discounted. The next period is worth just as much as today. If delta is worth 0, the future is worth nothing. Anywhere in between, we're discounting. So the expected present value, 1 divided by 1 minus delta. Quick problem for you to think about. Apply what we've learned so far. What is the present value of a stream of payments if a person's getting a $50,000 payment every single year and they have a discount factor of 0.9, which means $50,000 next year is only worth 0.9 of what $50,000 today is worth, and $50,000 2 years from now is worth 0.9 squared. Well, we just learned what the formula is to solve this. I'll give you a moment. You can pause it, solve it yourself, come right back. And what we see is, right, we take 1 over 1 minus delta. The delta is 0.9. Multiply that by the 50,000, and we see a present value of this stream of payments, present value is $500,000. So 1 divided by 1 minus 0.9, $500,000 present value. So as we model the games, how do we set this up? We use 2 general ideas of this. Overall, what we say is that in order to cooperate, you could cooperate, or you need some trigger when you would choose not to cooperate. So the 2 general ideas that we look at on this, and we really are going to play one more than the other, is a tit-for-tat strategy or a grim strategy. Now, the tit-for-tat strategy would suggest that the tit-for-tat strategy, you have the default rule that you cooperate, and you will do that as long as your opponent cooperates. But if your opponent defects, so if they choose not to cooperate, you will retaliate by defecting in the next round. That's the tit-for-tat strategy. So they misbehave, you'll misbehave the next round as a punishment. The other type, and this is the type we're actually going to be using more often when we're going through this course, these videos, it's called the grim strategy. And, well, might be an appropriate term because you play cooperate, each player would play cooperate as a rule. However, if the other player chooses not to cooperate, you will never cooperate with them again. And you know that your opponent's playing that too. So the grim strategy, people will cooperate, but if anybody chooses to cheat on the agreement, you'll never cooperate again.